Today, we are digging into a really important human rights case. It's a story that gets at a huge question. What happens when a state, the very system that's supposed to deliver justice, is the one that fails you? This is the case of Jackson Nkurikiyo versus the Republic of Burundi.
So let's just start right here. What happens when the people sworn to protect you, the police, become the very people you fear the most? For Jackson Nkurikiyo, who was a police officer himself in Burundi, this wasn't just some hypothetical question. It was his reality, and in the end, it was his death sentence.
All right, so the story kicks off in August of 2010, and like in so many of these cases, it starts with two completely different, totally conflicting stories about how a man ended up dead.
And the difference between these two stories is, wow, it's just night and day. On one side, you've got the official story from the state. They say a police patrol just found Jackson Nkurikiyo's body. They called it an accident, and they had no real explanation for his injuries. But his family? They tell a completely different and frankly terrifying story, that he was arrested by his own colleagues, tied up, beaten with batons, and then hauled away. They didn't see an accident. They saw a targeted, extrajudicial execution.
So why? Why would this happen? What was the motive here? Well, Jackson Nkurikiyo wasn't just some random guy. He was an insider. He had actually spoken out publicly against corruption inside the very police force he worked for, and his family was absolutely convinced that this act of whistleblowing had put a target on his back. After this unbelievable loss, the family started a long, painful search for answers. And they started right where you're supposed to, within Burundi's own justice system. But that quest? Well, it turned out to be a total dead end. I mean, just look at this timeline. It is staggering. The family files a complaint right away, in August 2010. A year goes by, nothing. 2 years, complete silence. By 2013, we're talking more than 3 years later, and there has been no real investigation. No interviews, no evidence gathered, just a brick wall. This wasn't just things moving slowly. This was a denial of justice through pure inaction. And it gets even worse. The system wasn't just ignoring them, it became actively hostile. The family and their lawyers started getting threats. They were being intimidated, harassed, so much so that they were actually forced to go into hiding. And for what? For daring to ask for an investigation into their loved one's death?
So this leaves you with a really desperate question, right? What do you do when every single door in your own country is slammed shut in your face? When the system isn't just broken, but it's actually become dangerous? The Nkurikiyo family did the only thing they could. They decided to look for justice beyond their nation's borders.
And that's how this fight moves from a local courthouse onto a continental stage, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights.
Now, for those of you who might not be familiar with it, the African Commission is basically the guardian of human rights for the entire continent. It's the place where people and their families can go when they believe their own country has violated its promises under the African Charter. It's a really big deal. But before the commission could even look at the evidence, there was this first major hurdle to clear. The state of Burundi tried to get the case thrown out. They argued it was inadmissible. They claimed the family hadn't tried every option back home and that, get this, an investigation was still ongoing. But the commission? Well, they weren't buying it. They looked at the facts and said, nope, a 3.5-year delay is totally unreasonable. They saw that the local options were useless and that the complete lack of any progress was all the proof they needed that the system had failed this family.
And with that, the commission made its first huge decision. The case was admissible. The family was finally going to have their story heard.
So now we get to the climax of this whole legal battle. After looking at all the evidence from the family and from the state, the commission came back with its final powerhouse verdict.
First, and this is the big one, the commission found a clear violation of Article 4, the right to life. They ruled that the state of Burundi had failed in its most fundamental duty, to protect its own citizen. They failed to investigate. They ignored all the glaring holes in their own police reports, and in the end, the commission agreed with the family. This was an extrajudicial execution. But the commission's findings went even deeper, and this is so important. They found a violation of Article 5, the ban on torture. And listen to this. Not only was Jackson Nkurikiyo a victim of cruel and inhuman treatment, but the commission also ruled that the state's refusal to return his body for proper burial caused his family profound anguish and distress. And they said that suffering, that psychological pain, was in itself a form of torture against the family. And from there, the violations just kept piling up. This wasn't just one mistake. It was a total systemic failure. The state was found guilty of arbitrary arrest, of denying the family their basic right to justice, of violating Jackson's freedom of expression as payback for his whistleblowing, and even of violating the rights of the family unit itself.
So a verdict is one thing, right? But what does accountability actually look like on the ground? And that brings us to the final and maybe the most important part of the decision, the orders.
See, the commission didn't just release a statement. It gave the state of Burundi a very clear 5-step to-do list. 1. Conduct a real impartial investigation. 2. Prosecute the people responsible. 3. Give full reparations to the family for everything they've been through. 4. Protect the family and any witnesses from more threats. And 5, and this is key, report back to us on your progress within 180 days. This was about action, not just words.
So why does this one case matter so much? Because it reinforces this incredibly important idea that when a country's own justice system lets its people down, international bodies like the African Commission can and must step in to create a path to accountability.
And that leaves us with one last big question. A legal ruling on a piece of paper is a massive victory, no question. But can an order from a commission, issued from hundreds of miles away, actually force the state to change its ways? Can it deliver the real, tangible justice that a family has been waiting over a decade for? That remains the ultimate challenge.